With the NFL scouting combine in the rearview mirror and free agency vastly approaching, we react to all of the Jets related reports and rumors across the Jets beat. It's the DTereman Football Show. It's live and it starts right now.
Not only have to understand how to win, but to understand how to consistently win.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the DTereman Football Show. I am your host, DT, coming to you on a Monday. My normal day job got a little bit messed up. We will be resuming our normal scheduled work tomorrow. So had a little bit of extra time, wanted to dive into all of the Jets-related notes coming out of the Combine. Rich Cimini, Zack Rosenblatt, Connor Hughes, even Brian Costello has a little bit of reporting based on this team, both free agency and draft-related. Before we get into that, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for getting me to 1,700 subscribers. We hit that threshold yesterday in our live show Sunday afternoon. So I really appreciate everybody for that. We are on our way to 2K subs, which we will be doing some kind of cool Jets giveaway for the community when we hit that mark. See a couple of you guys in the room already. Jake Asman says, Dylan in the daytime. Hey now. Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, had a little bit of time. We showed up to work. There was no work order for us. So we will not be laying floors today. Instead, we will be talking Jets football. Right away, 199 super chat from Jake. I appreciate it. He says, watching DT as I'm taking a Renzel, nothing better. I have no comment for that last part, but I appreciate you as well as everybody else for tuning in. Bill M, I see you in the comments as well. So first one we'll go through, and all the links are down in the description below. We'll start with Rich Cimini. He talks about his free agency ideas for the Jets. He says a couple of free agents without ties to this staff to keep an eye on: Rams safety Cam Curl and Chiefs safety Brian Cook. Further, while the Jets have significant cap space, around $90 million after the Jermaine Johnson trade, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll go big game hunting. Muji believes more in building the team through the NFL draft than free agency. I'd lean more toward the Jets operating in the middle tier of free agency rather than paying significant money for the players at the top of the market, even if they have the financial capability to do so. The main positions I'd expect them to invest in via free agency: safety, linebacker, and edge rusher. They'll add a veteran wide receiver too. So first and foremost, the thing that stuck out to me the most is not going big game hunting. They're going to be kind of fishing in the middle tier of free agency, and I think that's the smart strategy. I don't know if there is a guy that's worth breaking the bank for really at any position. There's a reason a lot of these guys hit free agency, whether it's injuries, performance, inavailability for other reasons, whether it's on or off the field issues. So I think a combination of age, injury, and all those things factored in doesn't necessarily bring about the strongest free agency class. Now, there are guys at the top of the market that I think could be worth it for the Jets. Malik Willis at the quarterback position, Devin Lloyd as a linebacker. Rich Cimini mentions it there. Cam Curl, I think he is at the top of the safety market. So we'll see just exactly how it plays out. But I do think going for the middle tier strategy is better than the big game hunting strategy in free agency. Build through the draft. That seems to be Darren Muji's MO, and I actually, would echo that. I don't think it's smart to build your team through free agency. You look at a team like the Washington Commanders, right? They hit on Jaden Daniels at the top of the draft, and then going into Jaden's second year, they just loaded up with a lot of veteran free agency players. And while it was, a relatively successful class, they didn't have a ton of success as a team. So can you find that happy medium between free agency and the draft to help build, because right now we have double-digit draft picks as well. So you have to account for 4 to 6 of those 12 picks probably being starters or heavy rotational players. So maybe the free agency is one where you see a combination of 1-year deals, right? Last year they had something like 18 to 20 1-year deals given out in free agency. Perhaps that number is closer to like 10 to 15 1-year deals, but then they have a bunch of guys on 2-year deals just in case it does work in 2026 and you want them again in 2027. You're not, having to re-up on a bunch of contracts for players that may or may not hit. So I do think the 2-year strategy in the B to C tier of free agency is smart. And Rich also mentions specific positions, safety, linebacker, edge, and then he mentions wide receiver, but he's attacking all 3 levels of the defense, or anticipating the Jets attacking all 3 levels of the defense in free agency. And I think that is also a smart strategy, right? Get your offensive young talent through the draft and get your defense through free agency. I think you can model a little bit like what the New England Patriots did last year. They added a ton of pieces in their trenches, right? Milton Williams, Harold Landry. I believe they brought on Kayvon Chason as well. They added a couple pieces in the back end, but I feel like it was more trenches focused. And I think that would be smart for the Jets, but you do have to add at all 3 levels of the defense. I'll be doing a live show tomorrow afternoon at some point, maybe tomorrow evening, doing my mock offseason 2.0. And before I read any of these articles, I was putting together my mock off season, and I was doing a lot of these similar things that they're talking about now. So I do think while it was like what I would prefer the Jets to do in my mock off season, it does kind of align a little bit now reading through Cimini, Rosenblatt, and Hughes's articles here for the Jets. Nate with a membership super chat. Appreciate you. 6-month membership. He says, congrats on 17, A1 since day one. Do more live streams. I'm trying, man. I promise you I am. March and April are going to be a lot of fun. There is a move for your boy in between that. The last day here in this apartment is April 10th. So March might be a little bit hectic as I'm trying to get into a new apartment. And then hopefully the first week of April, I'll be settling into the new apartment, and then we can ramp up for all of the draft festivities that we're going to be doing. But hopefully more live streams coming in March. I definitely saw an improvement on the channel in terms of engagement and everything in January when I was off work, doing a lot more streams. So that is certainly on my list of things to do, Nate. So I appreciate you for tuning in, and thank you again for 1,700. Now, the next thing that Cimini talks about is the quarterback position. And obviously, everybody wants to know about the quarterback position. Nobody knows who it will be. I don't even think the Jets really know who it is. Rich says the Jets have been linked to no fewer than a dozen. I feel like it's almost 2 dozen, approaching 3 dozen quarterback candidates or quarterback names that the Jets could potentially pursue. Everyone from the retired Derek Carr to Malik Willis. It's not a great year to need a quarterback one, so there's no surefire answer out there. He says there's a reason that the Jets will, or there's a sense that the Jets will look to add 2 veterans, steering away from overpriced big names and focusing on cost-effective backup stopgap starters, such as Tanner McKee, Spencer Rattler, Tyson Bagent. Another one to watch is Jarrett Stidham, who's under contract with the Broncos. General manager Darren Muji knows him from his time in Denver. So of those names, Zack Rosenblatt reiterated a lot of the same names, right? We'll kind of go down the list of Rosenblatt's names that Rich Cimini also mentioned. Tanner McKee, he thinks that the price is going to be a little bit higher for Tanner McKee than people are assuming. He thinks that Howie Roseman really likes Tanner McKee, and so does Nick Sirianni. So they're not opposed to keeping him as a backup for themselves. But I do think the price tag for Tanner McKee seems like, on the outside looking in, it's a little bit lowballed compared to what the Eagles might actually be asking of McKee. Now, some of the other names that were mentioned, Spencer Rattler of the Saints, they've obviously gotten what they believe is their franchise quarterback in Tyler Shuck, who they picked at 40th overall in 2025. So perhaps there's an avenue where Spencer Rattler is, available and the Jets can pursue that, what do you give up for the former 5th-round pick? I believe he was pick 150 or 151 overall in that draft. I was an advocate of bringing in Spencer Rattler for the Jets. I wanted him as the backup to Aaron Rodgers that year, candidly. I don't know if Spencer Rattler necessarily proved to be better than his 5th-round draft slot, but if you are trading for a quarterback, you're probably giving up, a 4th-round pick. So the Jets only have one 4th-round pick right now, pick 103. I probably wouldn't give that up for Spencer Rattler, and the Saints aren't going to trade him away for pick 175. So it's kind of a tough one. Like, what is the price? What is the asking point for a Spencer Rattler? But I do think of the names of, potentially available backups, Spencer Rattler to me makes a lot of sense. Will Levis from the Titans, I'm really not in on Will Levis at all. I just don't think he's, built for it at the quarterback position. He makes a ton of mental errors, a ton of turnovers. I don't know if it would work in New York. I remember being on Jake's show and he asked if it came down to Derek Carr or Will Levis. That's probably, the line where I would maybe take Derek Carr, but I still lean Will Levis a little bit. So that one's a tough one. I probably wouldn't want the Jets to do that, even as a quarterback too. Anthony Richardson from the Colts, I just don't understand why we would do that again. We tried to do the experiment, the project in Justin Fields, a guy who may not have had the best, fairest shot at quarterback. I don't know if Anthony Richardson's really going to be an improvement from what we saw. Now, I do think he is a better passer than Justin Fields, but again, he hurt his eye in warm-ups one game before the game even started and had to go on injured reserve. They didn't see the rest of him. Obviously, Daniel Jones was playing well for the Colts simultaneously, but I feel like Anthony Richardson can't get out of his own way. And I'll go back to the time where he checked himself out of the game because he was tired. I know, it's obviously not the best look, and I defended it at the time because the guy was running around for his life. But when you're the quarterback, man, you can't come off the field if you're, deemed to be the starter. So I would be pretty out on Anthony Richardson. Davis Mills, again, I don't know what the asking price is, and we'll kind of bunch these two together, Davis Mills and Tyson Bagent. What is the asking price of these players specifically? Why would these current teams want to move off of them? I know Ben Johnson did a lot of talking up of Tyson Bagent, saying that he deserves a shot at being a starter full-time in this league. And perhaps, a coaching staff is going to go to bat for their guy and say things maybe a little bit embellished or exaggerated to get their guy a better deal. And obviously, the Bears want the compensation back so that they can, allocate that to a different position and, find their new Tyson Bagent somewhere else and develop their own quarterback farm there. But what is the asking price? Why would the team move off of them? And in Davis Mills' case specifically, he had to play for Houston last year quite a bit and somewhat saved their season. So what is the, benefit to moving off Davis Mills if you are the Houston Texans, or Bagent if you are the Bears? So not really interested in many of those names. But again, this is why the tank would have been better if more quarterback names came out, right? If Dante Moore came out, if Ty Simpson finished the season healthy, if Nussmeier and Drew Aller were what they were supposed to be before the season, or if Klubnik and Sellers, the South Carolina kids, were able to, be what they were supposed to be, then it makes the tank worth it. But now we're sitting in this kind of purgatory area. None of the names are really enticing. Jared Stidham, I'm not ready to stiddy up over here in New York. I feel like he's an okay guy as like your number 2, but go get me like a better starting guy, and then Stidham can be your 2. And then if you want to bring in a veteran or a rookie, on day 3, whether it's Nussmeier, Aller, Taylon Green, Cade Klubnik, somebody like that, then that's a quarterback room I could see. But I don't know if I want to bring in a Jared Stidham as a starter. Of this list, the only starters I really see are Spencer Rattler, because he has starting experience, and maybe whatever Tanner McKee is can be a starting level player. Maybe he's like the 28th best quarterback in the league. But other than that, I just don't see the starting upside with any of these guys. So those were the 2 reports I thought were interesting out of Cimini's article. We had a tweet from Connor Hughes that kind of goes into a little bit of what Zach was saying as well. The Jets and Breece Hall continue to be active in negotiating Breece Hall's representatives in hopes of reaching an agreement contract. I don't know if I can't read or if Hughes can't tweet, but somehow that just didn't come out right. But they continue to negotiate with Breece Hall's camp to get an agreement done. The preference is not to use the tag. It seems like the Jets are fairly confident that they can get a deal with Breece done before they have to use the tag. And that, to me, would be beneficial. They can set the price at, market value, whether it's 11 to 13 million. And that's a little bit of what Zach was getting into, was that if the number comes between 12 and 13 million, Breece Hall is the 5th or 6th highest paid in the NFL at the position. But that doesn't mean that all of that is on the cap both years, right? Say they want to give him a 3 for $36 million contract. So it's 12 per year AAV. They can negotiate the guarantees and they can, mitigate the cap hit in 2026 and potentially 2027, where the cap is again expected to increase and the Jets are going to have over, I think it's like 200 million as it stands right now. So it is going to be interesting how they structure a Breece Hall contract more so than what it looks like on the surface. I don't even care if they give him 3 for 45 and it looks like 15 on the surface, and then the cap hits come in at like 6 million and then 11 million, and then it's a little bit more guarantees where it's cash over cap, and the Jets can still have flexibility financially after making that deal. So it seems like they would like to sign him to a multi-year deal at a number that comes in between the transition and the franchise tag numbers. So 12 to 13 million looks to be the range, and there's confidence that they can get the deal done perhaps before the deadline tomorrow, which at the end of tomorrow, which I believe is like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., the league day technically ends. That's when they have for the deadline for the tag. So if they don't get a long-term deal done, they'll tag him. And if he signs it, then they can work on a long-term deal after that. It doesn't mean that they can't negotiate with him until next offseason. So they still have room to go with Breece Hall, and the tag would just be a preliminary to getting a long-term deal done, hopefully, at least from their side of things. So this is Rosenblatt talking about the quarterback position. Coming out of Indianapolis, it seemed like their goal was to find out who was going to be available in free agency, who was available in the trade market, how much either route would cost in terms of cap space or draft picks. And he said he was told that the Jets have at least been having conversations about quarterbacks on other teams that are currently perceived to be unavailable. So who are those quarterbacks, right? I know Lamar Jackson is looking for a deal in Baltimore, and they seem pretty steadfast on trying to keep him long-term. But are there guys that aren't being talked about right now that may or may not be available that the Jets are at least poking around about? I was talking to some people, and it seems like they're doing that at other positions. I'm not going to, specify which ones we talked about, but the Jets are making calls. Darren Muji is certainly doing his due diligence across the league in the pro market specifically, trying to find out if there is a veteran at a certain position that they might be able to squeeze away with a draft pick that they probably won't be able to get a guy of that similar talent for. So we just saw them do the Tavondre Sweat trade where they sent off Jermaine Johnson for Tavondre Sweat, and it was rare player-to-player trade in the NFL, but it does seem like Muji is very active in trying to see what the trade market looks like. And it seems like that's the avenue that Muji has done the best in, right? I feel like the free agency class was pretty light on the surface and then didn't live up to even the smaller side of the expectations. The draft class was pretty good at the top. The first 3, maybe 4 of the first 5 picks were pretty solid. And then on day 3, things kind of fell apart. But when it comes to these trades, whether it was right before the season, in-season trades, and now, this trade at the start of the offseason, I think Darren Muji's done a really good job specifically in the trade market. So all options are on the table, according to Rosenblatt here. See over 80 of you guys in the room. I certainly appreciate it. Please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are talking all of the latest coming out of the combine from the Jets beat. Zack Rosenblatt also wrote about some quarterbacks he had been hearing about. he basically said that the Jets currently don't know who they are targeting. They truly are exploring all their options, like that last graphic just said. It looks like a combination of Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji, offensive coordinator Frank Reich, and quarterback coach Bill Musgrave are all involved in this process in some capacity. It seems like Reich is going to have a heavy hand in the choice at quarterback. And obviously, it doesn't really need to be stated, but I will anyway. Guys like Woody and Jaime and his consultants at the very top, the ownership level of the organization, they're going to be involved too. It's the quarterback position. That's just the nature of it. For right or wrong, owners want to get involved when it comes to their franchise passer or the guy who's going to be up on the billboards and banners at MetLife Stadium selling tickets. So those guys at the top are going to obviously be involved. But it seems like Glenn, Reich, Musgrave, and Muji are going to be the top guys, maybe in that order too. Glenn and Reich kind of spearheading it together, Musgrave having some influence with his 20 plus years of experience, and then Muji obviously will do his best. If it's not like say Muji has to trade for that guy, then that's where I think he'll have more of an influence as opposed to just saying Muji's preferences for a quarterback, right? So that's the preliminary thought, is that they're exploring all options, but they don't know who they're targeting. Justin Fields, he will be released. The Jets are in, quote, no rush. I still think it's going to be a post-June 1 designation. They save a little bit more money cap-wise that way. He did go on to say that Tyrod Taylor seems like he's open to returning. I would assume that's a quarterback 2 only. Like, you're not bringing Taylor back here to be a starter in any capacity. But could you get like a Marcus Mariota, Tyrod Taylor, and then you have a rookie as your quarterback 3? That's not, the worst quarterback room, I guess, given all the options. He went on to say, keep an eye on Andy Dalton, the Panthers quarterback who played under Frank Reich when they had rookie Bryce Young. Andy Dalton came in and had one of the most ridiculous games. I think he had like 400 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. He threw it like over 50 times in the game too, so it was like pretty egregious, but there is some familiarity there. And he predicts, similarly to Cimini, he said, I predict the Jets add 2 veterans and a rookie this offseason. So just playing it out, hypothetically, we'll just use that same example. Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, and Ty Simpson at 16. That's your quarterback room. I think that's pretty solid. Not the best, but it also doesn't prohibit you from trying again in 2027, in my opinion. So that was the bulk of it from the quarterback position. He did mention Derek Carr. Aaron Glenn has a relationship with David Carr from their time in Houston, and he doesn't see it happening as of right now. He just doesn't think it's the pairing that makes the most sense. Another veteran option that he doesn't see making a lot of sense is Kirk Cousins. He doesn't get the sense that Cousins considers the Jets a desired destination, and he's not sure the Jets are interested either. So a little bit of weirdness there. I would prefer Kirk Cousins as my option. I think he's just the best one. He's going to lead you to the most wins, give you the most stable floor. And stylistically, he's probably the closest to what a Frank Reich, Bill Musgrave quarterback, quote unquote, looks like. Malik Willis, he said he's likely to get anywhere between 20 to 33 million per year. Probably not going to choose the Jets if he has similar offers elsewhere. He lists Miami and Arizona. Obviously, Miami with the Halfley fit coming from Green Bay. And then the Cardinals with the LaFleur thing, brothers with Matt, obviously similar offense. And then he says, don't rule out the Browns, although it does feel like they're going to try to do Deshaun Watson and Shadir Sanders in some capacity in Cleveland there. So Malik Willis, maybe not the Jets option. Mac Jones, similarly to Tanner McKee, Davis Mills, and Tyson Bagent, the asking price is probably going to be higher than most people think. And the asking price on Mac Jones was already a second-round pick. So how much higher are you going for Mac Jones to maybe be your long-term starter and possibly be your long-term backup? Like, I don't know what you're giving up for Mac Jones to bring him to the Jets that makes it worth it at that price. And then you probably have to extend him too, because he'll be on a contract year. So I don't know, maybe Kyle Shanahan is just getting a little greedy here on his quarterback rehab farm, but Mac Jones might be available for a price higher than most people think. And then he talked about Kyler Murray. He wouldn't rule it out if Kyler becomes a free agent, which Ian Rappaport did report that it does look like Kyler will be cut, barring a last-minute trade. I don't think that will happen. He says if the Jets are interested in eating some of the money on Kyler's contract, which we've talked about, and I hope they don't do, Arizona could send them a pick. I don't know. Again, I don't think that the Jets would be smart to do that. Aaron Glenn does have a relationship with Kyler's father from Texas A&M. Kyler's dad was the quarterback at Texas A&M prior to Aaron Glenn going there in college. So they do know each other through the alma mater. He did note that if Jacoby Brissett were made available, the Jets would likely be interested in him, probably more so than Kyler Murray. So again, if Kyler is cut and you can negotiate the contract you want, you're not paying him 50 whatever, 60 whatever million over the next 2 years, then you have to consider Kyler, even though there are a ton of red flags and we all know that there's way more risk than probable reward with Kyler. All right, then talking about free agency, he kind of echoed the same sentiments as Cimini. Mid-tier free agency, not really looking to build through that avenue. They're more so looking to build through the draft, which, again, I'm not going to be mad at. And he mentioned the same, kind of parameters, the same positions as Cimini talked about. So maybe they're just being fed information from the same areas, but it does seem like aggressive approach on defense is going to be the way in free agency. So you go aggressive on defense in free agency. You enter the draft with, needs at probably a quarterback, wide receiver, edge, safety. You can probably go 1 or 2 on defense and then 2 on offense. You can maybe go 3 on defense, 1 on offense, depending on what position. Say you go edge at 2, guard at 16, linebacker at 33, and safety at 44. Like, you're doing a really good job of rehauling and revamping this entire defense for Aaron Glenn. And to me, I would prefer they go offense in the draft. But again, it's got to be how the board falls. I think there's more talent on the defensive side of the ball at the top, right? I don't think you're going to reach for the quarterback at 2. You might want to go for the quarterback at 16. That might make a little bit more sense, unless, again, you don't retain one of your guards. Like, do you want to have a massive hole at left guard and not fill that until day 3 of the draft? Or would you rather take a swing on like Vega Leone or Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon? So it's going to be interesting. I could see a strategy where they go 3 offense and their only defensive draft pick in the top 2 rounds is at 2, right? They go Bailey or Reese at 2. They go guard at 16. Maybe Ty Simpson makes it out to 33, or they trade back into round 1. They get Ty Simpson. The quarterback position is good, and then they get a wide receiver in the second round. I could see something like that as well. So interesting set of events for the Jets coming up here, obviously with Breece Hall first and foremost, and then the legal tampering period going into free agency. I think free agency is going to be a massive tell. It usually is for most teams, and I don't think the Jets are going to purposefully pigeonhole themselves into a specific position entering the draft. They're not going to ignore quarterback in free agency and just hope that their guy is going to be there at 16. I don't think that would be smart, and I just don't think they're going to operate that way. So a lot of interesting tidbits coming out about the free agency side of it. The only real draft tweet that I got from the beat writers was Brian Costello saying the Jets are bringing in Indiana running back Kalen Black for a 30 visit on March 12th. Black ran for 1,040 yards and 10 touchdowns for the Hoosiers in their national championship season last year. They're going to need to round out the room. They don't know what Braylon Allen is coming off the injury. Isaiah Davis is a good scat back, a good pass protector. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, but can you rely on him to be the running back 2? I don't know, and I don't want to see the Khalil Herberts and Keelan Robinsons of the world anymore. So, yeah, if they go get a Kalen Black who wasn't invited to the Combine after being at the Senior Bowl, so a little bit of interesting I wonder if that was like sometimes when players don't get invited to the combine, teams specifically ask for guys to go to the combine so they can get an extra look at him. So maybe there's a world where teams know what he is and they feel pretty comfortable about it. But I also don't know if like that's a bad thing for him because maybe teams don't view him as a draftable player and that's why he wasn't invited. So he was at Mobile, but not at the combine. Jets are going to bring him in, and I think they have to round out their room some way behind Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis. With that, I will turn it over to the chat. Just at the 30-minute mark, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe if you are new to the channel. Greg says David Mills would be a good call. Mills has skills. Yeah, it depends. Like, what do you value that skill set at? Do you think he's a starter for you or just a backup? Are you really going to trade for a backup and give up that much draft capital for him? Or if you give up that much capital, is it like assumed that he has to be a starter now? It's going to be interesting there with any of the tradable quarterback options. Just I would prefer them just go sign a street free agent, right? Like Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Marcus Mariota. If those guys make it fully to free agency, which it seems like they will, I would just prefer that over trading a day 3 asset for somebody. Leo's Dogs says, doesn't it seem like we cheap out every year on safety spot? And every year there are 1 or 2 pricier guys who we never even sniff around, and every year we need a safety. Yeah, I think that's going to change this year. Both Cimini and Rosenblatt alluded to Cam Curl and Brian Cook in their articles, so I think that's a really interesting one. Double up there. You can honestly double up in free agency and still draft a safety on day 3 and really round out that room with 4 talented players alongside Malachi Moore entering his second year. Over 100 of you guys in the room. I appreciate it across X and YouTube. So really appreciate everybody for tuning in on a Monday afternoon. Armand says deadline is 4 p.m. tomorrow. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 4 or 5 p.m. that their business day ends. So we'll know by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Before I go live tomorrow afternoon or evening, we'll know about Breece Hall and where it stands with him. Again, I'll be doing a show tomorrow, probably in the afternoon, depending on how late I work. Doing a mock-off season 2.0. We do free agencies, internal and external, a couple of trades that I think are going to be a lot of fun. And then we do a 5 or 6 round mock draft on the back end of it. So it's about 45 players deep on the 53-man roster. I'm not going to predict, the last 8 spots that end up getting turned over every year anyway, but we did a pretty lengthy prediction on, what the roster could look like at the top coming out of the offseason. Billy says Cousins has never wanted to play in New York. That's true. He definitely has not, and perhaps it's not going to be a thing this year, but I do that would just be my preference, whether it happens or not. I'm not going to be upset if it doesn't happen, but if he signs for an outdoor team in the cold for what I think is a reasonable price for the Jets and they were not even interested, that'd be a little bit of a bummer to me. Gary 3D Boxing, he says, what up, Dylan? What's up, Gary? Congrats on your number 1 seed in the bracket. I'll be rooting for you. I think there's a good chance Gary brings a lot of voters to the polls on his day during the bracket in March Madness. Excuse me, as Maniac Madness. Jerome Stacks, he says, I just subscribed. Well, I appreciate you, Jerome's Tracks. Thank you so much. We're over 1,700. We're approaching 25 last time I looked. So I certainly appreciate that. And like I said, when we get to 2,000, we'll be doing some kind of giveaway for everybody. Not sure what it's going to be. It's going to be some kind of signed item, probably of a former player. But as we get closer, I'll start gauging interest in what we think about giveaway items. I don't want to pick something and it not be enjoyed. So I want you guys to have input on what the prize is, as well as how to get in on winning that prize. ISU says, hey, Dylan, proudly displaying your collection of rope hats, I see. Yes, I certainly do have plenty of rope hats. I have a couple over here over my shoulder that you might not be able to see as well. don't know if they're rope hats, but I did a count. I have close to 20 hats now. I got a couple more. My birthday's coming up, so my brother got me another one, another golf hat. So yeah, the collection grows. That table is got no more space on it because it's taken up by hats. This is an interesting question here from John. He said, "What's a player comp for Breece's floor?" That's a tough one. So I'm not like a big fan of comping players because I don't like doing the comp of a prospect to an NFL player. And I also don't have enough historical data from, watching enough prospects to say from a prospect to a prospect coming into the league, this is a good comp. So that's a tough one. I just think that his floor in general is, that's a good one. Like, who is a good player? I want to say somebody said Andrew Van Ginkel the other day about like how he can be a pass rusher, but also like drop back in coverage and be an off ball linebacker. So I don't know if that's like a good comp for his floor. And that's probably not somebody that's going to be like, oh my God, we have to go get that guy at 2 overall. But it is hard because there is so much projection in Breece that I don't have an exact player, but I think his floor is still worth the pick at 2. Even if he just stays as he is and doesn't really develop, his skills on and off ball are definitely worth the pick at 2. So I don't have a necessarily like a player comp, but his floor is worth it. JJ says, how much better is Styles over CJ Allen? I think there's a reasonable gap between the two. Styles is just such a freak, man. Like, CJ Allen is good. Don't get me wrong. Very smart player. Probably better against the run than in coverage. Whereas I think Styles just excels in everything, every facet. So you're probably talking about like a multiple all-pro contender in Sonny Styles. And CJ Allen, like, he could be a Pro Bowler, multiple Pro Bowler potentially. So I would say there's a gap. I just don't know if it's that significant. Like CJ Allen, early 20s to, pick 40. Like pick 20 to 40, I think is a good range for CJ Allen. Whereas Styles, I think his absolute, like, the lowest he should go is 16 to the Jets. Like if we pass on him twice, that's asinine to me. So I think there's a bit of a gap, but maybe not, a huge one. Coach Glick, he says, damn, I didn't win the Powerball. That's upsetting. I don't play the Powerball, so I will never win the Powerball. But if I win the Powerball, I won't tell anybody, but there will be signs that we won the Powerball for sure. Let's see. Chris B, what's up, man? I appreciate you hopping in here. He says, I feel our Jets would like to sign Breece to a multi-year deal. And as a Jets fan, I believe that number would come in somewhere between the transition and franchise values on a per year basis. Yeah, I think that it's a reasonable range for Breece, is 11 to 13 million. Now, do the Jets, if they are faced with competition and multiple suitors, would they have to like extend the bill up like 5 to 7, maybe even 10% more than the other team? I know that they have right to first refusal in terms of matching the offer that a team would give them, but I don't know if Breece right now, before signing that tag, is saying, hey, I want you guys to pay that, quote unquote Jets tax for me now and pay 8% off the top because I can go somewhere else that might be a little bit less toxic, a little bit more stable, more conducive for my success. And I won't have to sit here and say when teams shoot themselves in the foot, we shoot ourselves in the face. So it is going to be interesting what they do, but I firmly believe that Breece is going to be here at about $11 to $12 million, at least for 2026, because they're going to tag him if not. JJ says, which wide receiver would you choose at 16? Well, if the rumors are true that Mekhi Lemon is some kind of serial killing sociopath and whatever that buzz is about his character concerns and bombing interviews, whatever that is, like if he makes it to 16, guys, like that is a run the card up type of moment, and I wouldn't hesitate there. I would take Jordan Tyson if he falls, only if their medicals check out with the team interviews and stuff like that. So I would take one of those two guys. Omar Cooper Jr., you can convince me makes sense. Casey Concepcion, you can convince me makes sense if they want a smaller, less, boundary type guy, like they want a more slot guy. Concepcion wins like with such vertical ability and separation. I love that. Omar Cooper Jr. is kind of a little bit of a rounded everything kind of guy from the slot. Denzel Boston was pretty good on the boundary, really good against press coverage, or at least had the biggest sample size against press coverage of those three. So I wouldn't mind a wide receiver there, but if Lemon and Tate and Tyson are all gone and you're choosing between like Veglione, Ty Simpson, and Boston Cooper or Concepcion, give me the guard or the quarterback over the second tier of wide receivers, in my opinion. What up, Ted? He says, Love had an amazing combine. How far do you think teams will be willing to trade up into the top 5? I don't know if teams will want to trade up for a running back, but there is a large portion out there talking about the Giants at, I believe, 5 being interested in Love. I think the Titans have interest in Love as well. The Cardinals at number 3 could just outright take Jeremiah Love. Like, say they want to keep Jacoby Brissett and they don't really do a ton at quarterback. Maybe they don't like Francis Malinois, the tackle from Miami at 3. They think it's a little rich and they don't want to go defense and they want to go Jeremiah Love at 3. I mean, I don't know if somebody needs to trade up for him, but again, it only takes one to trade up and do it. I just don't know who that team would be. But if we get to the draft and Jeremiah Love is not there when the Browns pick at 6, not saying that they would pick him, but if he's already off the board, would not be surprised. So much for the Scatterboo hype. Yeah, so no, it wasn't the Giants that were interested in Jeremiah Love. The Giants were interested in veteran running back. Oh, Kenneth Walker, because Kenneth Walker doesn't look to be getting the tag from the Seahawks. So it looks like they might be the Giants might be heavily pursuing Kenneth Walker if he hits the open market. So it wasn't Jeremiah Love, but yeah, the Scatterboo hype, like he's going to be in a committee. Like he's got to be. He can't be the bell cow as much as people love him and he drinks energy drinks out of his dirty cleats. Like he needs to be in a committee. He's not a feature back. Tank for Ty says this class is deep. Grab the freak at 2 and the quarterback at 16. Cooper Jr., Oregon safety at 33. Bernard or Pons at 44. So many good players in this draft. Get the franchise QB. Ty is a stud. Yeah, I think, and it's funny, I saw a tweet, and I'm not saying I've necessarily been guilty of this, but I do think historically the class is not as strong as years past. But it is funny how there are some people who are completely out on the entirety of this draft class. I think the top 25 is pretty solid. And then between like picks 25 and 65, you get a lot of difference in opinion there. So there's good players in every single draft class. And you mentioned it, like the board falling to us in a positive way at 44 is probably more likely than not, but it just matters about hitting in that range where there is more difference in opinion, right? Like we know you're going to get a stud at 2, right? Unless the guy is just a terrible person or a bad human being on or off the field, you're probably coming away with a stud at 2. You can take your swing at quarterback because it's worth it there. Like Ty Simpson at 16 versus Aller or Nussmeier at 44. I am 12 times out of 10 taking Ty Simpson at 16 over those other guys in day 2. Now, if it's Nussmeier or Aller in rounds 4 or 5 versus Ty Simpson in round 1, then maybe that value versus opportunity cost is a little bit swayed. But I'm taking Ty Simpson. And then you mentioned Bernard and Pons. I love those guys. Talked about them. I did storylines coming out of the combine, and Pons was part of it. I thought Jeremy Bernard had a great combine performance, and obviously Dylan Thieneman If he's not there at 33, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, he's working himself up to be a first-round pick at this rate. This is a good question here, Glick. Do you think advancements in training are leading to higher measurables at the combine this year? I think a lot of that has to do with more precise training regimens, right? These guys are really focusing in on testing numbers and really learning the fundamentals and the mechanics of like the 40-yard dash and the 3-cone and things like that. Like, they're really putting a lot of time and the vertical jump and broad jump. I think they're actually just putting a larger emphasis of their pre-draft training process into those specific events. And that's why guys are picking and choosing more. Like, I don't want to do the short shuttle because after this entire grueling week of combine stuff, my legs feel like rubber and I don't want to do the short shuttle because I'm going to get a bad time. Also, I probably practiced a little more for the 40-yard dash, so I want to just show my straight line speed as opposed to my change of direction ability. So I think the training processes and regimens definitely play a part in why these measurables are historically high, right? I think every position in the draft except for quarterback was on average the fastest position in combine history, and the quarterbacks came in at the second fastest time in recorded history for the position at the combine. So it's pretty interesting how the science and the data behind training and everything is actually, paying dividends come combine, because guys know that they can make money in their shorts and in their underwear at this week in Indianapolis, whether it's on the field or in the interview process. Like, they're going to win over some guys and some personnel members during this week. NBA says Bailey or Reese at 2. So my personal rankings has Bailey higher than Reese by half a point. So it's literally just splitting hairs. It's just because Arvell Reese is a bit of a projection, and I'm not quite sure what it looks like full-time on the edge, although I think it can work. So personal rankings, I have Bailey ahead of Reese, but predictively speaking, I think it's Reese going to be the pick at number 2. He's just a freak, 20 years old, plenty of upside. The coaching staff believes in their ability, right? Last year they came in, I've used the term peacocking before, saying, oh, it's just coaching, they're going to get it all right. And now that they have a lot more experience on the coaching staff and like more viable coaching experience too, like it's actually like tangible coaching experience. Like Steve Wilkes was one and done at 5 different spots before coming here. Carl Dunbar comes here with 20 plus years of defensive line experience specifically. So I do think that they feel they can get the most out of Arvell at 2. James Walsh says, just a dumb question when watching the combine. I saw Tate run the 40 at 4.54, twice. Now teams said it was 4.45. What's the disconnect? The TV time is not always the most accurate, but it is the most consistent for all of the participants at the combine. Everybody, most teams have a guy that is holding a stopwatch doing their own time. What time shows up on TV is not the time that they write in their books. Like I know that for a pretty good, like that's a near fact, is that teams write down their own clocked hand times as opposed to what the TV tells them or what the official numbers might tell them. So there is going to be some discrepancy there, maybe, 5/100ths to 1/10 of a second taken off. So that's why you kind of get that 4.54, 4.45 discrepancy, right? It's 9/100ths of a second different. It's when you start seeing the pro day times where it's like Carnell Tate, who ran a 4.54 official at his combine, he ran a 4.36 at his pro day. It's like, okay, now we're just getting crazy numbers. So I'm not going to say, and you followed up by saying, so the TV numbers are BS. No, they're not BS. They're they're accurate, but they're not going to be 100% across the board. Like, it's all electronic, so there's nobody hand timing it. Like I said, it's just the most consistent measurement across the board for everybody, because when their body and those sensors cross that line, the time stops. So if a team has, Carnell Tate at 4.52 as opposed to 4.54, they're going to write 4.52. So to me, the official numbers, like if there's a bit of a discrepancy there, I'm not going to really care that much. It's only like when you get to the two tenths and more of a second different, that's when you're like, okay, let's do a little bit more research. What did the guy look like on tape? Like, you can see if a guy's going to run a 4.2 on tape as opposed to a 4.5. So if he's getting like crazy, a larger spectrum of numbers, and then one of them is probably BS. JJ, do you think we upgrade center or guard spot? I think it's got to be the guard spot. Now, let's say they bring back Elijah Vera Tucker. Go draft a round 3, 4, or 5 guard with center versatility, or a center with guard versatility. Then you have a guy who can competently play all 3 spots on the interior if you get an injury to Tippmann, AVT, or Myers. Now, if they want to go the route of Tyler Linderbaum, and I don't think they will, then you can probably hope that Josh Myers can give you some guard flexibility, even though he's never done it in his career, or then look to add a later day 3, like around 5 or 6 round guard to add to the depth piece. So I think that they should look at upgrading both together, even if it is with that same kind of player, right? Like Keelan Rutledge is a name that I keep bringing up because he's one of my favorites. Center with guard versatility. He played center last year at Georgia Tech, but he has played guard for, to get them out of a game because of injury at Georgia Tech. So I do think you can get a guy with versatility and upgrade, a 2-for-1. Sharon says, one of those offensive linemen from Iowa. I would love it. I know Bo Stevens and Logan Jones are the 2 big names. Logan Jones, to me, like at pick 103 in the 4th round, absolutely love it. Jennings Dunker is probably a mid round 2 to early round 3 type of player. I don't know if he's worth it at 44. The mullet is probably giving him some bonus points for some teams here and there, but I don't think he's worth a top 50 pick. Maybe like around pick 75 is better than what people think, just because he had a very good combine. James says, what's your opinion on Demario Davis? I'd rather a younger linebacker. What do you say? I would love Demario Davis, and like if you got Demario Davis and then used pick 103, or somehow found yourself in the 3rd round and got Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech, I would love that, because you have your short-term bridge linebacker, right? Like if you're looking for the quarterback of your defense, that's your bridge quarterback on the defensive side in DD. And then you can pass the torch to Jacob Rodriguez, who can step in and be the green dot in year 2 or 3, similarly to how the Lions just did it with Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell, right? So a similar mindset like that. Now, if they went and got a Sonny Styles, then I hope that they didn't get any linebacker in free agency to a big, contract. Like they don't go get a Devin Lloyd, right? But if they got a Demario Davis and a 3rd to 4th round linebacker, I would be really impressed with that. Yeah, Rodriguez can play, man. He's a turnover machine. He was a lot of fun in Mobile. Obviously, I have a little bit of bias because Dom and I got to talk to him at Senior Bowl Media Day, but just a stud, man. Like there's some really good linebackers. Anthony Hill is another good linebacker. CJ Allen, who we talked about as well. Torian York from Texas A&M. He's a bit smaller. I think he's like 5'11", 220. So maybe not the size thresholds that you want at linebacker, but that's the position where I double dip. I take a free agent like Anzalone or Demario Davis, and then I go get a mid-round rookie as well to round out that room with Jamian Sherwood and Kiko Malinois. Take a couple more questions here. Approaching the hour mark. 100 of you guys in the room. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you're new. James says these safeties are freaks in this draft. There are a ton of just defensive backs in general that I really like. That was one of my standout storylines from the combine is how many awesome DBs there are for the Jets. Just going down the list alphabetically, Brennan Cisse, obviously he was mocked to the Jets. South Carolina, he was mocked in the first round. He's probably a day 2 guy. Bud Clark, if you could get him at the top of day 3, is awesome out of TCU. Takario Davis, the lengthy corner out of Washington who blew up the combine. Mansour Delane at the top of round 1, if you wanted to get him at pick 16, should he fall. Caleb Downs, I mean, just ridiculous, of course. Bishop Fitzgerald from USC. Let's see, plenty of guys here. AJ Halsey, Colton Hood, Davison Igbinosun, Jalen Kilgore, Will Lee III, Dermod McCoy, EMW. Like, there's so many. Malik Muhammad. Julian Neal from Arkansas is really good too. Jumped out of the gym, 11 foot 2 inch broad, 40-inch vertical for Julian Neal out of Arkansas. Kamari Ramsey, D'Angelo Pons, who we talked about, VJ Payne, Keontae Scott. There's just so many DBs that I don't think they necessarily have to take a guy at 16, 33, or 44 to fill the hole in the boat. But, man, you go get a round 4 or 5 corner and safety, and you're probably getting decent production out of them within the first 2 years. I just think that there's so much depth defensively in this class. So, yeah, I would agree with that, James. JJ says, just subbed and hit the bell. You are the man, JJ. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. ISU, did you watch Altmaier throw at the combine? He had good touch and was steady Eddie once again. Yeah, so he was basically the same way at the combine. I felt like he was just kind of, steady, like you said. That's the best way to put it. He was consistent. He didn't make a ton of mistakes. I don't love him, but again, as like a day 3 dart throw, as your quarterback 3, competing with Bailey Zappi and or Brady Cook as quarterback 3 or 4 going into next year, I don't hate it. But yeah, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are around 2 or round 3 worthy. I think Ty Simpson should go in the first round, and then there should be a pretty significant drop-off. And it's usually not the case. But if I'm the Jets, like looking at the Jets pick specifically, if they don't come away with Ty Simpson at 16 and he's not there at 33, I'm not taking a quarterback until pick 103. And I still really wouldn't like that as opposed to what could be there at a different position. ISU says, hell to the no on Taylor Green. Why would we want a taller version of Justin Fields? Yes, he's athletic, cool, hard pass on a massive project. So he is a project, but he is not a taller version of Justin Fields. He is so much of a better passer, in my opinion. Now, admittedly, I will have to do the full tape study of his time at Arkansas, but just watching him as a passer at the Senior Bowl and then watching him throw at the Combine, I do think he is a better passer than Justin Fields was coming out of Ohio State. But yeah, the athletic comps are going to lean in that direction. Dom C looked over to me at the third day of practice, and he was like, he gives me Randall Cunningham vibes. So even if you're getting like a small, like a Temu version of Randall Cunningham in Taylor Green, I'd absolutely love it. But yeah, he's another one for me. Like, it doesn't start until probably between 103 and 175 where I would entertain a guy like him. But you take him based on traits and his flashy upside to be a developmental quarterback for you. Strudelman, hour in the 4th round sounds about right. Yeah, I don't think these guys are top 100 picks, in my opinion. They don't deserve to go in the first 3 rounds. Right after Ty Simpson, I think it's a pretty significant drop-off to Aller and Nussmeier. Not saying those guys can't be anything, but it's just tough. Like, Aller has a lot of mechanical issues. He had the lower body injury with the ankle. He just looks a little timid. He doesn't look like he can get through his reads. Nussmeier, I know his hands were a little bit larger this time measuring at the Combine, but similar things. Like, he was playing through a lot of injuries. He is on the smaller side. He's even smaller than Ty Simpson. So for the guys that say Ty Simpson is small but want Garrett Nussmeier, I'm not really understanding that one. But yeah, it's tough. I think 4th round is the best for those guys. And they'll probably end up going, one or two of them in the third round. Yeah, Holmes, I agree. Altmaier in round 6 or 7, maybe even a priority UDFA. I think he could be a potential backup. But we said a lot of the same things about Brady Cook, and then watching Brady Cook in live action was just absolutely terrible. All right. ISU says Taylon Green threw 10 touchdowns in the first 2 games of the year last year at Arkansas against Alabama A&M and Arkansas State. I'm sure a lot of us could throw 10 touchdowns against those teams. Then proceeded to throw 9 touchdowns the rest of the year, plus 11 picks. Again, he isn't it. I'll have to do the tape study and get back to you fully on my evaluation of him. But yeah, it is tough. It's traits based. That's really all it is with him. And the ball flies off his arms and he's fast as hell. If he can just hone in on the accuracy and the decision making, I'm sure a team will fall in love. All right. Holmes says, how many wide receivers you see off the board by pick 16? At least 3. If 4 are off the board and you're deciding between wide receiver 5 or another position, I'm taking the other position. So no, you are not a mirage. I see you here. Michael Palermo, why would we keep Brady Cook? I don't know. I think he's just under contract. So there's just no downside to keeping him up through camp to see what he is, which probably is trash. Yeah, long-term backup in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, I'm taking a big swing next year. I think that's probably what they're ending up going to do is get a couple veterans in here, a mid to late round swing at quarterback in the draft, and then look into 2027 where they can, move around the board and have more luxury to get to a spot where they feel is comfortable enough to get a quarterback. All right, we're at the hour mark, so I'm going to end it here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe if you are new to the channel, like JJ did. Hit the bell, get the notifications for when we go live. I will be back either early afternoon or late afternoon, possibly after Jake's second show tomorrow, doing a mock offseason 2.0. Have a lot of cool different things to talk about in terms of how they could go about this offseason in that presentation for you guys. So be tuned right here on the channel. Another episode of the Dylan Tereman Football Show in the books. I appreciate you all for tuning in. And until next time, let's go, Jets.